On December 13th, 1872, exactly 150 years ago, a ragged, tattered brigantine limped into the ports of Gibraltar with a crew of only 3 men. This was the Mary Celeste, one of the most infamous vessels in maritime history. These 3 men had salvaged the ship from the sailing vessel Dei Gratia after finding the Mary Celeste drifting aimlessly in the mid-Atlantic Ocean. But here's what makes this case terrifying. What happened to the captain, his wife, his 2-year-old daughter, and the 7 crewmen on board remains a complete mystery to this day. No bodies, no signs of struggle, no explanation. Just an empty ship sailing itself across the ocean. It's not uncommon for ships to vanish without a trace. From high-profile disappearances like the Collins liner Pacific to the White Star Line's Neronic, thousands of vessels have simply been swallowed by the sea and forgotten. But what is uncommon is for an entire crew to vanish without any sign of struggle or danger, while their ship continues sailing in near-perfect condition. Was there some curse or dark supernatural force behind this? Or was it basic science that, when ignored, led to the deaths of 10 innocent people? Today, we're going to expose this 150-year-old mystery by diving deep into the original source material and uncovering the true story of this bizarre, unlucky vessel. The Mary Celeste wasn't always called by that name. She was originally built as the Amazon in 1860 in Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia, Canada, a remote shipbuilding region known for the most extreme tides in the world. She was a brigantine rigged with 2 masts, measuring 99 feet long with a gross tonnage of 198.12 tons. Nothing extraordinary in construction, but her career would prove to be anything but ordinary. From her very first voyage, death followed this ship. The Amazon's first captain was Robert McClellan, a young newlywed who had been feeling unwell. He believed the sea air would improve his condition. It was a fatal miscalculation. Before the ship had even cleared the Bay of Fundy, Captain McClellan developed severe pneumonia. The ship turned back, and within days, McClellan died. The very first cargo this cursed ship ever delivered was the body of her first captain, home to his widow. A captain named Jack Parker took over command, but trouble continued. The ship got entangled in fishing wires in Maine, requiring days of repairs. Then, while sailing through the Strait of Dover, she collided with a British brig, sinking it completely. All survived, but the Amazon needed repairs yet again. For the next several years, the ship sailed the Atlantic under different captains, but bad luck never left her side. By 1868, after multiple accidents, ownership disputes, and even an intentional shipwreck by a treacherous captain, the Amazon was abandoned and sold at auction in New York for just $1,250. The new owner renamed her Mary Celeste, meaning Heavenly Mary or Mary of Heaven. But even the heavenly name couldn't save her. She changed hands several more times until James Winchester, a former sea captain, bought her and invested heavily in rebuilding her. To recover costs, Winchester sold a 1/3 interest to a Massachusetts captain named Benjamin Spooner Briggs, who would take command. Benjamin Briggs was the ship's 6th captain in just 11 years. His first voyage would take him from New York across the Atlantic to Genoa, Italy. Briggs was a family man who wanted his loved ones with him on this crossing. His wife Sarah was his childhood sweetheart, and together they had 2 children. Arthur, about 8 years old, and Sophia, just 2. Arthur needed to continue his schooling, so he stayed behind with his grandparents. The Mary Celeste would carry 10 people to Italy. Captain Briggs, his wife Sarah, his daughter Sophia, and 7 crew members. The first mate was Albert Richardson from Maine, a trusted, experienced sailor. The second mate was Andrew Gilling of New York. The cook, Edmund Head, had married just shortly before the voyage, just like the ship's ill-fated first captain, McClellan. The remaining 4 crew were able-bodied Prussian sailors, 2 brothers named Folkert and Bas Lorenzen, plus Arian Martins and Gottlieb Gaudschall. Also aboard was the ship's cat, whom little Sophia affectionately called Pooh. Through October and into November 1872, the Mary Celeste sat at Pier 50 on the East River, preparing for the Italian voyage. The Briggs family made the ship their home. They played music on a melodeon they'd brought aboard, wrote letters to family, and entertained visitors. Despite the comfort, Briggs missed his son Arthur deeply. On October 20th, 1701 barrels of denatured alcohol were loaded into the hold. This wasn't ordinary alcohol. It contained additives that made it poisonous, foul-smelling, and nauseating. The barrels were laid on their sides with wood wedged between them to prevent rolling. Alcohol is one of the most dangerous cargoes to transport. If not properly vented, deadly fumes can build up. Tuesday, November 5th was departure day. The Mary Celeste was towed from the pier, but winds and fog forced Captain Briggs to anchor off Staten Island for 2 nights. During this time, Sarah Briggs wrote one final letter home to her mother-in-law. 2 days later, the weather cleared. The Mary Celeste raised anchor and set out into the Atlantic. About a mile away in Hoboken, New Jersey, sat another ship, the Dei Gratia, meaning the grace of God. She was bound for the same destination and would depart about a week later under Captain David Morehouse. Remember this name. It becomes crucial later. The Dei Gratia departed Hoboken on November 15th, 8 days and 200 miles behind the Mary Celeste. From the moment both ships set off, they encountered rough seas and stormy weather. On November 25th, about 20 days after setting sail, the Azores Islands were spotted. Rain poured, winds howled, and the ship creaked and groaned as gigantic swells tossed her about. The 10 people aboard were thrown around inside, as was the volatile alcohol cargo in the hold. Captain Briggs made an entry in his logbook. They were approximately 6 miles from Santa Maria Island, their first sight of land in the entire journey. The log slate showed the beginning of an entry for November 25th. This was the last record of human activity aboard the Mary Celeste. The Dei Gratia encountered the same storms, reaching the Azores in early December. On the afternoon of December 5th, Captain Morehouse spotted sails about 5 miles off the port bow, slowly approaching. He looked through his spyglass and saw no one on deck. More specifically, no one at the helm. The sails were unkempt, the ship drifting erratically. Something was very wrong. The Dei Gratia crew tried multiple times to hail the mystery ship without success. Finally, Morehouse ordered his first mate Oliver DeVoe, second mate John Wright, and seaman John Johnson to row over and investigate. Johnson stayed in the rowboat while the 2 mates climbed aboard. They found absolutely no one on deck. Many popular retellings claim the Mary Celeste had maintained her course perfectly, that the logbook was kept until the very hour of discovery, or that fresh hot food still sat on the dining tables. None of this is true. Here are the actual facts as originally reported. The sails were tattered, out of order, hanging ragged. Some had been hastily pulled down. Absolutely nobody was aboard, not even the ship's cat. A portion of the portside railing was missing. First mate DeVoe immediately checked the pumps. They worked perfectly, but 1 to 2 feet of water sloshed in the holds. Everything in the cabins was soaking wet. The deckhouse windows were covered with boards and canvas, showing the crew had battened down during storms. However, the cabin skylight was propped open, letting rainwater in. The captain's beds had been slept in but weren't made. This was significant. Sarah Briggs, as a proper woman of her time, would never leave beds unmade for long. The crew must have departed early morning, shortly after waking. Most chillingly, the impression of the 2-year-old Sophia was still visible on the bed. Nearly all belongings of the captain, family, and crew remained aboard. Food and water remained sufficient for the rest of the voyage and beyond. Nothing substantial was taken. The ship's log showed entries until November 24th, 11 days before discovery. The log slate had an unfinished entry for November 25th, but DeVoe would later accidentally erase it while using the slate himself. The ship's navigation equipment and documents were missing, and critically, the lifeboat was gone. The Mary Celeste had drifted 378 miles east from where she was abandoned, traveling 400 nautical miles without any human guidance. Captain Morehouse and his mates agreed to salvage the derelict. DeVoe believed the Mary Celeste was in near-perfect condition and could sail again. Within hours, he had her functional. The Dei Gratia continued to Gibraltar, and by evening, the Celeste followed. For 3 men to repair a derelict at sea and sail her 600 miles through storms, arriving only 1 day after a fully crewed vessel, was remarkable. Upon arrival, the ship was seized pending investigation. The investigators couldn't comprehend how a perfectly sound vessel could be abandoned mid-ocean without signs of struggle. They suspected foul play and searched the ship thoroughly. A sword was found under Captain Briggs's bed. Investigators claimed to find blood on it, but chemical tests found no blood on the sword or anywhere on deck. The supposed bloodstains were iron citrate, simple rust. The investigation also revealed that approximately 300 gallons of alcohol had leaked from the cargo. Deep marks on the deck timber looked like axe strikes. These details raised suspicions but proved nothing. Judge Frederick Solly Flood suspected Morehouse had murdered Briggs and his crew to claim salvage, but nothing could be proven. Despite months of investigation dragging on until March 1873, the court ultimately released the Mary Celeste, paid the Dei Gratia crew a 20% salvage fee, and the cargo was delivered to Italy under a new captain. Over 150 years, countless theories have emerged. Murder for insurance. Did owner Winchester hire the crew to kill Briggs for insurance money? No evidence supports this. Dei Gratia ambush. Did Morehouse's crew ambush the Mary Celeste? Impossible. There were no signs of struggle, and the Dei Gratia was slower. Briggs family conspiracy. Were the Briggs family in on a scheme to fake the abandonment? The strongest evidence against this: they left their 8-year-old son at home. No parent planning to disappear would abandon their child. Pirate attack. No signs of struggle, and valuable cargo remained untouched. Seaquake or waterspout. These would either destroy the ship instantly or pass quickly. Arthur Conan Doyle's fiction. In 1884, the Sherlock Holmes creator wrote a fictional story about the ship, claiming a passenger went insane and killed everyone. This was pure fiction, but reignited public interest. Supernatural theories, sea monsters, aliens, Atlantis connections. These need no serious explanation. Based on original evidence and scientific analysis, here's what probably happened. The 1,701 barrels of alcohol sat in cool temperatures during loading. When the Mary Celeste entered the Atlantic and encountered rough storms, the cargo was thrown about while atmospheric pressure changed dramatically. As the ship approached Europe, temperatures warmed significantly. This created excess fumes seeping from cracks and leaks. The storms forced the hatches to stay closed, trapping dangerous fumes inside. The Mary Celeste's log notes rumbling sounds from the cargo hold. The crew knew fumes were building up. On the morning of November 25th, Captain Briggs awoke to a break in the weather. With toxic fumes on everyone's mind, he likely ordered the hatches open to vent 2 or more weeks of accumulated alcohol fumes. What followed would have been terrifying. As fumes escaped, the vessel groaned and wailed. Oil lamps may have flared wildly. Headaches and nausea would have struck the crew quickly. What merely made adults feel sick could have been far more dangerous for a 2-year-old child. A professor at University College London later demonstrated how butane gas in the presence of alcohol creates an explosion that shoots flames upward but leaves no burn marks, exactly matching the Mary Celeste's condition. Captain Briggs faced an impossible choice: keep his family on a ship that might explode, or put everyone in a small lifeboat and hope for the best. Briggs was no fool. He loved his family. With his wife and infant daughter present, he wasn't taking unnecessary risks. They lowered the lifeboat on the port side, explaining the missing railing, hastily gathered bare necessities, and propped open the skylight to release fumes. Some sails were dropped hastily, but they didn't have time to lower all the sails. A 300-foot line was attached to the lifeboat. The entire crew climbed in, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and a potential explosion. They expected to wait only a few hours before reboarding, but shortly after the morning's weather break, rain squalls and strong winds returned. The remaining sails caught the wind, suddenly accelerating the Mary Celeste. The crew in the lifeboat couldn't pull themselves back against the speeding ship. They had 2 terrible options: keep trying to reach the ship and have their boat wrecked, or cut loose and row toward Santa Maria Island, just 6 miles away. But the wind was blowing strongly against them, pushing them out into open ocean. They were hopelessly doomed. A lifeboat adrift in 1872 was nearly impossible to find. The Mary Celeste drifted 378 miles over the next 8 to 10 days until the Dei Gratia found her. By then, the wind had turned the ship completely around. She was sailing back west, back toward the scene of the disaster. The 10 people aboard were never found. Their bodies were never recovered. They simply vanished into the Atlantic. After returning to New York in September 1873, Winchester desperately tried to sell the Mary Celeste. But her haunted reputation was so infamous that nobody would touch her. She changed hands multiple times, always at a loss. In 1879, while sailing near St. Helena, her captain fell ill and died within hours. The 3rd captain to meet an unfortunate end aboard this cursed vessel. Finally, the ship's last owner devised a scheme: intentionally wreck the ship for insurance fraud. The final captain was ironically named Parker, just like the captain who took over after McClellan's death on the very first voyage. The Mary Celeste was deliberately run onto a reef near Turk's Island. As the ship crumbled into the sea, Captain Briggs's logbook, containing invaluable historical records, was lost forever. The insurance company saw through the scheme immediately. The owner and crew were brought to court and forced to return the insurance money to avoid jail time. But perhaps they chose the wrong bargain. Within 6 months, the owner, captain, and first mate, the 3 men responsible for the Mary Celeste's final destruction, were all dead. And the curse didn't stop there. 2 vessels that had assisted the insurance investigation were both lost with all hands aboard on their very next voyages. In 2001, a Nova Scotia company discovered what they believed were the remains of the Mary Celeste off Haiti, embedded in the same reef where she crashed 117 years earlier. At Spencer's Island, where the ship was first built, a stone monument now stands commemorating maritime history's most infamous vessel. Local legend holds that after the Mary Celeste was wrecked, the Spencer's Island Company was offered the chance to buy her back. They wisely declined. The Mary Celeste has become synonymous with the very concept of a ghost ship, the first vessel people think of when they hear that term. The unusual circumstances, the near-perfect condition of the abandoned derelict, the missing crew who vanished without a trace, and the tragic career of this vessel have captured our imagination for 150 years. 10 people boarded that ship on November 7, 1872. A captain who loved his family, a mother who was her husband's childhood sweetheart, a 2-year-old girl whose impression remained visible on her bed, 7 sailors, including 2 brothers and a newlywed cook. None of them were ever seen again. And perhaps that's the most haunting part of all. Not supernatural curses or sea monsters, but the simple, terrifying reality that sometimes the ocean takes people, and we never learn why. The Mary Celeste remains, 150 years later, one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries.